Hello, planet Earth. I must have dozed off, catching up with an old favorite. Oh, isn't it wonderful to get lost in a dream? I was dreaming of being another girl in another time. Hi, DK. My BFF Jill, 730. And as the title suggests, we're in for another Buffyverse discussion today. So break out your super gay Buffy bag, reach in, grab your pocket watch, a plate for your mom to break, and some cheese. Come with me now, planet Earth, for a Buffyverse discussion on what it means to be the active Slayer and the mysterious Slayer dreams.
Show me that smile again.
Show me that smile.
Don't waste another minute on your crying. We're nowhere near the end.
The best is ready to begin.
Oh, as long as we got each other, we got the world spinning right in our hands, baby, you and me.
We gotta be
The luckiest dreamers who never quit dreaming. As long as we keep on giving, we can take anything that comes our way. Baby, rain or shine, all the time. We got each other, sharing the laughter and love.
Okay, planet Earth, so as part of our lead up to Faith, I'm going to take a moment to talk about what it means to be the active Slayer and what the Slayer dreams are, where they come from, and what's going on with them currently in the Buffyverse. So the first thing you need to know is that the term active Slayer is actually something that's pretty new in the world's terminology, because this term is never actually needed until Buffy dies for just a split second, long enough for Kendra to come along. And thus Kendra is the first active Slayer, if you will. Because when Buffy dies, her death activates Kendra as the next Slayer, right? But Kendra dies, and her death activates Faith as the next Slayer. And so, basically, Faith is what we would call the active Slayer, as in her death will actually activate the next Slayer in line. Now, we know that she is technically the active Slayer because of Buffy's second death, because in Buffy's second death, when she jumps off the tower to save Dawn and the rest of the whole world, she doesn't activate a new Slayer with her death. We can surmise from this that no, Buffy has used up her one calling a Slayer card. So basically, Faith has yet to die, and so she is technically the active Slayer. However, Buffy has activated all of these new Slayers in the world. And so the thing about this is they are all technically active Slayers, if you will. But the whole thing about it is we don't really know what the rules are for this. We don't know how the Slayer lineage, how the legacy is going to continue after this great big 3,000 or so girls had been activated. So yes, Faith is the active Slayer, but here's where we run into a possible continuity issue with the series. Now you see, the first came in season 7 to try and destroy the Slayer line by killing off all of the potential Slayers in the world, right? As Buffy is talking to the potential Slayers in the episode Potential, she is explaining to them that her death could activate the next Slayer. And that's not what we've surmised by all of the evidence given to us, because you've already died 3 times, you
drowned with the master, you jumped off a building and were dead over the summer, and then, you technically flatlined at the hospital.
and no new Slayers popped up then either. And so this whole notion that Buffy's death could actually create a new Slayer is actually false. I don't know if Buffy's uninformed or if maybe that particular writer was uninformed, but it's an uninformed statement. And the fact of the matter is, Faith is our active Slayer. Now, the reason that the first was able to do this, supposedly, was because there was this disturbance in the Force or whatever, and the mystical energies surrounding the Slayer had been irreparably altered. Okay? This is supposed to be because Buffy was brought back from the dead, but it could just be because, Faith was killing humans and things like this. But Giles and Anya are pretty much telling us that it's because Buffy came back from the dead, and we just have to take their word for it. But again, Faith is what we call the active Slayer. Being a Slayer is not all super strength and having sex with hot vampires. No, it turns out that there are these Slayer dreams. Okay, so the Slayer dreams happen because basically the Slayer power is this one great big power, and it moves from girl to girl. And so basically, as soon as the Slayer power moves into the current Slayer, the active Slayer, if you will, all of her memories are carried on with the Slayer power. And so that from the moment of her calling to her death, those memories stay with the Slayer essence and go into all of the Slayers henceforth. So what this means is basically where being the Slayer is really this thing where you're completely alone all the time, and that's how it's kind of painted for us. We really have this shared experience, this shared connection between all of the Slayers. And this is actually what prepares them for battle. You see, the Slayers in their dreams, they relive the past memories of Slayers before them. And also they kind of can see things in their own future and perhaps things of other Slayers' futures. And so they are able to kind of be better fighters because they have all of this like collective memory pool to draw from. We know that Buffy gets dreams, gets the Slayer visions because we've actually experienced them with her. And we know that Faith also has Slayer dreams because we've seen Buffy and Faith participate with one another simultaneously in the Slayer dream space. Now, we've never actually seen Faith's Slayer dreams per se on her own. We did see Faith's dreams, but I don't think that you could call them, the Slayer prophetic dreams, if you would, because, like I said, they were just dreams. But we do know that she does have access to this dream space. And so the conundrum that we're in now is that all of these Slayers in the world, there are like 2,000 or so, are out there, and they are all having access to this dream space. And the first Slayer that we see who has access to this dream space is Dana, the crazy vampire Slayer. Now, she had all of this crazy psychological trauma, and when she was getting her Slayer visions, she was getting them in her waking state, and she was getting them in her dreams, and basically because of what was going on in her head, she couldn't decipher the Slayer visions from reality. And so she actually believed that she was all of these Slayers from the past. Now, the interesting thing about this is, like I said, all of the Slayers have access to this kind of shared experience. But right now, there are basically as many Slayers in the world living as have ever lived before, pretty much, because the Slayer line goes back millennia. The great, question that I have is, how is this kind of shared experience affecting the actual legacy of the Slayer? It's got to be driving some of them crazy. And the thing about it is, we meet somebody along the way in Faith's story in season 8 named Gigi, and these dreams are actually, literally driving her crazy. She gets all these nightmares just like all the other Slayers. We know that the other Slayers get these dreams as well because part of the commercial that Andrew and Vi make is talking about these crazy dreams. So Gigi has been told by this crazy warlock guy who's kind of leading her around and telling her what to do, that if she kills Buffy, then she will actually stop having all of these dreams, and that all of the Slayers will stop having these crazy dreams, and that they'll be free of them and able to take their place at the height of society, because she's like this blue blood. But I'll get to her in her own video later. So Genevieve believes that yes, if she kills Buffy because she's supposed to be the source of all their Slayer power, that it will stop these dreams. I would beg to differ. I think that if Faith is technically the active Slayer, if her death was supposed to be the only one to activate a new Slayer, then she would be kind of the source of all of their power. And there's kind of this big question mark in the air on Faith right now because we don't know what will happen in the event of her death. because it should have activated the new Slayer, but Buffy and Willow have already done this with magic. And so the Slayer legacy is kind of up in the air right now because, yeah, we're writing this new book of magic, but so far as I can tell, we haven't really written any new rules about Slayers. We haven't really set down the rules for Slayers. And right now, the rules are kind of like writing themselves. So, about these new rules of magic going on in the world right now. It's kind of crazy because in Season 9, we met Billy the Vampire Slayer, who will be getting his own video very soon because, yes, he is technically a vampire slayer. Now, the reason for this is because there were all of these vampires that had overrun his small California town, and he took it upon himself to become a vampire slayer. Now, of course, Billy is this little gay boy who's in high school, and whatever, he lives with his grandma, and we'll get into all of that in his video. But basically, the thing about it is, after he had kind of taken it upon himself to train himself in the ways of the Slayer, Willow planted this new seed of wonder down at the deeper well, and this new kind of magic is making its way into our world, and it's becoming the new way. And so, what's going on with Billy right now is basically, since he basically chose himself to become a Slayer, he is now getting these crazy Slayer dreams, which is unprecedented because no male has ever experienced the Slayer dreams. Unless you count Xander and Giles during Restless, but we're not counting that. So yeah, this is like unprecedented and super cray, right? Alright, now the crazy thing about all the army of Slayers, right, and Billy getting his Slayer dreams, right, is that we have actually kind of seen how all of this is going to play out. Because 200 years in the future, there's Malaka Fray. And Malaka Fray is the first vampire slayer to have been called in as many years. And so, basically, she has all of her physical slayer powers, but she does not receive these prophetic dreams. And it turns out that her twin brother actually inherited her slayer dreams. And the shit of it is that he became a vampire. And so since he is demon, he is actually able to discern these visions in his waking state. And so he's a vampire slayer. Crazy, right? So he uses this advantage of having all of the memories of past slayers to basically overrun future Manhattan. And yeah, Hearth is just like not cool to deal with. And again, it goes to this whole, we don't really know how the rules of magic are going to lay out. There are two really interesting points that stick out at me about the Buffy character within the Restless episode. The first is when Buffy has kind of reached into her super gay Slayer bag and she starts covering her face with all of this mud because she's kind of reaching into the primal part of her. Riley comes upon her, looks at her and sees what she's doing, and she kind of registers him looking at her, and he sees her as kind of this monster. And Buffy kind of registers that he's seeing her as this monster, but at the same time, she's doing what she needs to do, like what she's supposed to do. And she has this realization on her face, which is to say that Riley can't reconcile her world with his human world. And there's always going to be this distance between the two of them. Now, the other really beautiful thing about the episode is right at the very end. The very last frame of Restless is gorgeous because, of course, Buffy is constantly having these Slayer dreams. The Slayer dreams are inescapable. She can't ever stop having them. None of the Slayers can. And she can do as much of living her life during the day as she wants to. But at the end of the day, she has to go and sleep in her bed and be the Slayer, even in her dreams. And so it really is this inescapable thing. In the very last frame of Restless, Buffy turns the light off in her bedroom, and the way that the shadows from the streetlights across the blinds hit Buffy's bed is in these lines as if her bed is a prison, solidifying the fact that she can never be Buffy, and she can never be the Vampire Slayer. She's always going to be Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And reconciling this duality within herself will be her entire life. And there is no escaping it, even when she goes to bed. So that's pretty much what you need to know about the Slayer dreams and what it means to be the active Slayer. I will be using these terms in the Faith videos coming up, and I just wanted to go ahead and fill you in on what they are, what they mean, and how they work. So, hope you've enjoyed today's Buffyverse discussion. You can find me on Facebook, I'm Preston L. Young. You can find me on Twitter, I'm at ThePWitty. And of course, you can come back to the Buffington Post anytime right here at IDK, my BFF Jill 730. I've got Buffyverse discussions, I've got Buffy reviews, Angel and Faith reviews, and you can always check out my newest opening credit sequences in their own playlist. So, hope you're having a great 2015 so far, and have a nice day.
Show me that smile
Ooh,
again.
show me that smile.
Don't waste another